There's a moment that happens after you've consumed enough self-help content. You've read the books, you've listened to the podcast, you've journaled, you've reframed your thoughts, you understand the concepts, you can articulate the insights, you know what you're supposed to do, and yet nothing has actually changed. Not in a sustainable way, not in a way that holds when life gets stressful, or when you're tired, or when the old pattern pulls you back in. You have all this awareness, all this knowledge, all this understanding, and somehow you're still operating the same way you always have. And the question that follows is always the same. If I know what to do, why am I not doing it? And the answer you're usually given is, you need to shift your mindset. You need to believe it more. You need to think more positively. You need to embody the energy of the person you want to become. But here's what I want you to consider. Mindset isn't the problem, and mindset by itself isn't the solution. This video is about why mindset alone never creates lasting change. It's about the difference between insight and embodiment, about why positive thinking collapses the moment stress enters the picture, and about what actually has to happen for the knowledge to become behavior. This won't tell you that mindset doesn't matter. It does. But it will help you see why mindset is the beginning, not the engine. And why, if you're feeling stuck, it's not because you lack insight. It's because insight has nowhere to land. Let's start with something most people don't realize. There's a difference between insight and embodiment. Insight is what happens in your mind. It's the moment you understand something, the light bulb, the realization, oh, that's why I do that. Insight feels powerful because it feels like clarity, like you've finally seen the pattern, like now that you know, you can change. But embodiment, that's what happens in your nervous system. That's when the new pattern becomes automatic, when it stops requiring conscious effort, when it becomes how you operate, not how you think. And here's the gap that most people don't see. Insight doesn't automatically lead to embodiment. Understanding something doesn't mean your system has integrated it. Knowing what to do doesn't mean your body knows how to do it. You can have the insight that you deserve rest, but if your nervous system is still wired to equate rest with laziness, you won't actually rest. You can have the insight that you don't need to prove your worth, but if your system still spikes with anxiety when you're not being productive, you'll keep overworking. Because insight lives in your prefrontal cortex. It's conscious, it's logical, it's the part of you that can observe and analyze and make sense of things. But behavior? Behavior is driven by deeper systems, your limbic system, your nervous system, the automatic patterns that run before you even realize you're running them. And those systems don't update through insight. They update through repetition, through safety, through lived experience that proves the new pattern works. So when people say, just change your mindset, what they're really saying is, just have the insight. But insight is only the first step. And if you stop there, if you think awareness is enough, you'll stay stuck. Because your mind will understand the change, but your body won't trust it yet. Now, let's talk about positive thinking, because this is where the mindset myth does the most damage. Positive thinking sounds good. It sounds empowering. Just believe in yourself. Just focus on what you want. Just shift your energy. And when life is calm, when you're rested, when nothing is triggering your old patterns, positive thinking can feel like it works. But the moment stress enters the picture, it collapses. Because positive thinking is a conscious override. It's you using your prefrontal cortex to talk yourself into a different state. And that works until your nervous system gets activated, until you're triggered, until you're scared or overwhelmed or exhausted. And in those moments, your nervous system takes over. It bypasses your conscious mind entirely. It pulls up the old pattern, the one that's automatic, the one that's been reinforced over years, the one that feels familiar. And all the positive thinking in the world can't override that, because your nervous system doesn't care what you think. It cares what it's learned to do to keep you safe. This is why people can affirm themselves all day and still collapse under pressure. Why they can visualize success and still self-sabotage. Why they can believe they're worthy and still operate like they're not. Because belief, when it's only cognitive, doesn't reach the part of you that's making the decisions. And when positive thinking fails, when you revert to the old pattern despite your best intentions, you blame yourself. You think, I didn't believe it enough. I didn't try hard enough. I'm not strong enough. But that's not what happened. What happened is you tried to use a surface level tool to address a system level problem. And surface tools don't hold when the system gets stressed. Here's the third thing. Change requires repetition, structure, and reinforcement. Not just once, not just when you feel motivated, consistently, in conditions that feel safe enough for your nervous system to trust the new pattern. This is what most mindset work misses. It focuses on the moment of insight, the shift in perspective, the decision to change, but it doesn't address what comes after that. Because after the decision, you have to practice. You have to create conditions where the new behavior is easier than the old one. You have to repeat it enough times that your nervous system starts to recognize it as familiar. You have to reinforce it with evidence that it works, that you can do the new thing and still be safe. And that takes time. It takes structure. It takes more than just thinking differently. It takes living differently, consistently, even when it feels uncomfortable, even when the old pattern is louder. And this is where people get stuck, because they have the insight. They've shifted their mindset, but they haven't built the structure that allows the new pattern to actually take root. So, they try to rely on willpower or motivation or belief. And when those run out, and they always run out, the old pattern comes back. Not because they didn't want it enough, but because there was no structure holding the new one in place. Mindset creates awareness, but structure creates change. And structure isn't sexy. It's not a moment of transformation. It's not a realization that shifts everything. It's the boring, repetitive work of doing the new thing over and over until it becomes automatic. It's designing your environment so the new behavior is the default. It's setting up systems so you don't have to rely on decision making in the moment. It's creating conditions where the new pattern gets reinforced, not just thought about. And without that structure, insight just floats. It sits in your mind, clear and understood, but it has no way to land, no way to become real. Here's the fourth thing. Mindset is the beginning, not the engine. You need the insight. You need to understand why you're stuck, what's not working, what needs to change. That awareness is critical, because without it, you're just repeating the same patterns unconsciously. But awareness is the spark, not the fire. And if you treat it like the fire, if you think that once you've had a realization, the work is done, you'll keep wondering why nothing sticks. Because the real work comes after the insight. The real work is building the conditions, the habits, the structures, the nervous system safety that allows the new pattern to become your default. And that work, it's not glamorous. It doesn't come with a before and after photo. It doesn't have a moment where everything clicks and you're suddenly a different person. It's slow. It's repetitive. It's unsexy. but it's the only thing that actually works. Because thinking differently isn't the same as living differently. And if you want lasting change, you don't just need to shift your mind, you need to shift your system. So let's bring this together. If you've been doing the mindset work, if you've had the insights, done the reframes, understood the patterns, and you're still stuck, it's not because you're doing it wrong. It's not because you don't believe it enough. It's not because you're broken. It's because mindset alone was never going to be enough. Mindset creates awareness. It opens the door. It shows you what's possible, but it doesn't walk you through. It doesn't build the path. It doesn't create the conditions that allow the new pattern to take root. And you might be feeling something right now. Maybe frustration, maybe relief, maybe anger that you've spent so much time and energy on something that was only ever the first step. That's valid. That's real. Because the self-help industry has sold mindset as the solution, as the thing that, if you get it right, will transform your life. And when it doesn't, when you have all the awareness and still feel stuck, you blame yourself. But the issue isn't you. The issue is the gap between insight and embodiment, between knowing and doing, between thinking differently and living differently. And that gap, it can only be breached with structure, with repetition, with nervous system safety, with conditions that support the new pattern until it becomes automatic. Mindset gives you the map, but structure is what gets you there. And this is where people feel stuck, not because they lack insight, but because insight has nowhere to land, no framework to operate within, no system to support it. And without that, you're just endlessly cycling through the same realizations, wondering why they're not translating into change. You don't need another insight. You don't need to reframe your thoughts one more time. You don't need to shift your energy or raise your vibration or believe harder. You need structure. You need repetition. You need conditions that allow your nervous system to trust the new pattern more than the old one. And that's not something you think your way into. That's something you build slowly, consistently, without the promise of a dramatic transformation. But it's the only thing that lasts. So if you've been wondering why all the mindset work hasn't created the change you wanted, it's not because mindset doesn't matter. It's because it was never meant to do the job alone.